told Chelsea Manning to remember our inherent obligation to one another and awakened this young whistleblower to the truth described in her words. We are human, and we are killing ourselves. The conscience that was brought forward by Manning and then amplified by WikiLeaks through their method of transparency shone the light into our history. The release of the Colorado Matter video didn't just expose Bush's war crimes. It revealed darkness inside this nation that goes all the way back to its very inception. In the original 38 minutes video footage that captured the everyday life of the brutal military occupation in the oil-rich Middle East, the colonization of the past was carried over. In the shadow of Iraqi civilians who were paralyzed under the US military gunsight, those who remain frozen in lost pages of history began to reveal themselves. The cynical naming of the Apache helicopter evoked a memory of the killing of natives that took place long ago in this land. Through access to this forbidden view made possible by WikiLeaks, we were given an opportunity to witness crimes committed against the indigenous people of America. In the uncensored image of a modern war, what did we see? We saw our government violating the highest law of the land. These were ideals that inspired America's independence from the British monarchy, expressed in the words of Thomas Jefferson, all men are created equal. America represented a new world for freedom-loving people around the world to come together to form a new union, governed not by the king, but by a rule of law. Yet despite these ideals, America was never a democracy. From the onset, it contained internal contradiction manifested in the genocide of natives, the slavery of black, and the suppression of women. But the words in the Declaration of Independence were a promise, and the Constitution was meant to be its fulfillment. The conscience of ordinary people was a vital link that could fill the gap and create a democracy. Out of conscience springs the power of we the people that could truly perform checks and balance of our government. When the laws themselves become unjust, conscience reminds us of our duty to break these laws in order to uphold highest ideals. In our history, we've seen individuals who fought to keep those words of promise through their act of civil disobedience. Martin Luther King, who demonstrated extraordinary courage for the struggle of black people to fight against racist laws, once said, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because one's conscience tells one that it is right." Decades after the civil rights movement, a young US soldier, in her act of delivering information to WikiLeaks, risked her life to carry on this American tradition of civil disobedience. As a consequence, she was sentenced to 35 years in prison and served 7 years until her sentence was commuted in 2017. Now, by refusing to testify against the publisher at the secret grand jury targeting WikiLeaks, she is sent back to jail again. After having witnessed Manning confessing her role as the WikiLeaks whistleblower at her court-martial, the late attorney Michael Ratner acknowledged how locking her up for even a day is to lock up the conscience of this nation. Julian Assange is a journalist, but foremost, he is a defender of this American conscience. Now the Department of Justice trying to punish him for his courageous act of providing protection to his source by framing it as though he had conspired with his source to assist in espionage in order to hack into a government computer. So we are now clear what this US extradition case against Assange is all about. This prosecution of Assange and the detainment of Manning are assault on our conscience. Vicious attacks came both from Republicans and Democrats. Rep. Peter King, a New York Republican, designated WikiLeaks as a terrorist organization. Former Vice President Joe Biden compared Assange to a high-tech terrorist, while Californian Senator Dianne Feinstein urged that Assange be prosecuted for espionage. Corporate media engages non-stop in smearing, describing this Nobel Peace Prize nominee as a rapist and Putin's intelligence asset. The former CIA chief and Trump Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called WikiLeaks a hostile intelligence service. Now using the rhetoric of traitor and threat to national security, the DOJ tried to extradite Assange and sentence him for life in prison, or worse, to execute him. But who are the traitors? Who are those who engaged in conspiracy, working in secret to betray American ideals? WikiLeaks' publication of documents concerning wars in Afghanistan and Iraq revealed that the US government's conspiracy to perpetuate racism in a war on terror with Muslim as the new black. WikiLeaks' release of the DNC and John Podesta emails pierced the veil of the illusion of an American democracy. It let us see that the Democratic establishment conspired against the people by secretly colluding to undermine Bernie Sanders during the primary. And the Hillary Clinton campaign's strategy was to get friendly media to elevate Pied Piper GOP candidate like Donald Trump. Their publication of Vault 7, the largest leak of confidential documents in CIA history, revealed that the agency developed cyber weapons that enabled them to spy on us through smartphones and smart TVs. It exposed that the intelligence community is the true ruling elite of our society, growing its power with surveillance, military occupation, and financial terrorism. The US government, with the UK, Sweden, and Spain as its allies, pressured a small South American nation to hand over Assange, who exposed the national security state and their conspiracy against us. Here is what I say to my government. The indictment you make against Assange is yours. Yours to claim. These are charges for your own crimes, not for this Australian journalist who acted bravely to protect ideals that funded this nation. Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange reminded us of the highest law of the land inscribed in our heart. They are real patriots who fought to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With their love for humanity, they sacrificed their personal liberty so that these unalienable rights can be enjoyed by everyone around the world. Now, the beast of secret laws try to devour them. The conscience has no chance for a fair trial in the empire's justice system. It is defenseless before the Espionage Act. For this vulnerable love for humanity, we are the only line of defense. Assange's fight against extradition has just begun. He is fighting for his life. but also he's fighting for all of us. We now must join this battle to defend and free the conscience of America that have become imprisoned in this war on truth. We must become a shield for whistleblowers and publishers. Only through us forming a court of public opinion can we end this empire and its conspiracy and redeem the torch of liberty that this nation once held as a beacon of light for the world. Free Julian Assange. Free Chelsea. Free Chelsea Manning. Free Chelsea Manning.
Free Chelsea Manning. Okay, so next we're going to have a singer, and I think it's important to have some culture in this struggle because not only do they want to attack journalists and whistleblowers, they want to attack musicians who are critical of the United States and what the United States is doing. So do you want to come up? What was your name again? Maya. Welcome, Maya.
So,
are you going to play the drums?
Okay, you got me on.
maybe I don't wanna feel like you do, but I do wanna know how you feel. I just don't want you to be all alone in this, darling, share your world with me. Even when it's hard, we're in this together, remember that. We're in this together when it's dark. I am your lightning, you won't thunder through this storm alone. I won't let you thunder through this storm alone. I won't let you thunder through this storm alone. You roll with the punches, you just keep on trucking. I can't just sit still and hang tight. No, I won't be able to do one more round of fables. You just gotta let me in on this fight. Even when it's hard, we're in this together, remember that. We're in this together when it's dark. I am your lightning, you won't thunder through this storm alone. I won't let you thunder through this storm alone. I won't let you thunder through this storm alone. I won't let you thunder.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we hope Julian hears those words. So this is, my name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with United Public Workers for Action. I do a labor program called KPFA Work Week Radio. And the Pacifica National Foundation, which represents stations all over the country, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, Houston, and New York has called for support of Julian Assange. But you know, it's amazing, this corporate media. They call about this being a democracy. This country is called a democracy. But they murder journalists. In the Iraq War, it was U.S. troops who bombed journalists at a hotel. And they talk about democracy. This country has bloody hands. This government has bloody hands. They're terrorizing journalists all over the world. They're murdering journalists. The Palestinian government with the United States is terrorizing Palestinian journalists who are murdered for telling the truth about the United States and Palestine. The Turkish journalists have been attacked by the United States government. So we're talking about a rotten, corrupt media that lies about democracy, that lies about the reality of U.S. imperialism. That's what we're talking about here. And we are here today to say that we want Julian Assange freed now. Free Julian Assange. 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 Julian Assange. Free Chelsea Manning. 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 Chelsea Manning. Free Chelsea Manning. So Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning. So one of the one of the journalists here today who are joining us and has been active in the support of Julian Assange and others is Peter B. Collins. He's a journalist and broadcaster. Welcome, Peter B.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's World Press Freedom Day, and I'd like to know if there are any practicing journalists in our midst here today. Thank you for being here. We're in an unprecedented state of media malpractice in this country. And I'm standing here right now calling out the New York Times, calling out the Washington Post, and calling out the San Francisco Chronicle. These are profitable media outlets that have generated revenue by publishing materials that came from WikiLeaks. And their rank hypocrisy shows here on World Press Freedom Day when they don't lift a finger or even drop a spot of ink in support of our rights to defy the excessive secrecy that our government has been employing for far too long. And they're willing to profit and to exploit the work of an individual like Julian Assange and then turn around and smear him. And I particularly call on John Diaz, the editorial page editor of the Chronicle, who wrote a piece a few weeks ago where he flatly declared that Julian Assange isn't a journalist and that his work is not the practice of journalism. That is flatly false. And it's a falsehood in service of the military-industrial complex and both parties in our political system who support the deep state, the secret actions of our government, and the cover-ups of criminal behavior, including war crimes, the cover-ups of failed policies, wanton destruction, and petty embarrassment. And when I posted an item on Facebook, which is engaging in a new wave of censorship this week, announcing this rally, two of my allegedly progressive colleagues from the radio talk business immediately posted counter-narratives. And I want to name names. One of them came from Christine Kraft, a woman who was a real fighter for women's rights. She, 30 years ago, launched a lawsuit against a company that fired her because she was a woman. And I have respected Christine when she has stood up for unpopular causes and individuals. I'll give you an example. She and I were one of a handful of people in this town who supported the rights of Ross Mercarimi, the sheriff who was railroaded out of office by Ron Conway, and the billionaire tech people who now run San Francisco. And I had deep respect because she was willing to stand up to that wave of smear. There was just a very naked effort to take out one of the real progressives who was applying. We saw Trump use Julian Assange for his campaign. There was one account that in a single month, I believe it was October of 2016, Trump mentioned WikiLeaks 56 times. And after his government arranged with the British and leaned on Ecuador with a combination of threats and economic bailouts from the International Monetary Fund, Trump said, "I don't know WikiLeaks. What are you talking about?" But he's not the only one. Even if you step back from Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, the injustice that Chelsea Manning is currently enduring, a bizarre form of double jeopardy that's being applied to squeeze her in order to get more information or data that they can use to prosecute Julian Assange. And no one should be fooled that the single charge that they have brought for the purpose of extradition is about unlawful entry into a government computer. That is a trivial charge. It's a pretextual charge. And whether they amend the indictment with additional charges before or after he is extradited, we cannot rely on the Trump administration, including that slippery-tongued devil, Bill Barr, to observe the law and precedent and protocol regarding extradition, and the assurances that were given to Ecuador that he would not face the death penalty can be flushed away faster than Trump's tweet from yesterday. And so we must stand firm, and we must demand the release of Chelsea Manning. To my knowledge, only Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has spoken up demanding freedom for Chelsea Manning. And no one can justify or rationalize what they are doing to her. And this is just compounded injustice that is designed to teach a lesson to anyone who might come along later and seek to receive or distribute so-called classified information from our government. And this is just the latest attack on my contract with the United States of America, which is called the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights are very clear, except for that second one. And we must demand that our right for free speech and freedom of the press under the First Amendment, our right to be free from unconstitutional search, seizure, and surveillance under the Fourth Amendment, our right against self-incrimination using the data that the government has collected from us and that Google and Facebook collect and profit from, we must demand the return and restoration of our rights. And maybe I can set this small example for you. I occasionally interview or encounter members of Congress. And I make a point with every last one of them, including the last time I talked to Nancy Pelosi. And they squirm a little bit when I say this. But I look them in the eye and I say, give me back my goddamn Fourth Amendment. And they kind of just said, what's he talking about? Where's that coming from? What do we got to do? Well, Section 215 of the Patriot Act is due to expire in December. And the Trump administration announced this week that they are going to seek not just an extension with a time limit, but making permanent the incursion into our rights that permit the government to collect our phone calls, to use surveillance cameras. Some of them are corporate, some of them are public. They're all wired into networks that feed into the fusion centers, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I see a lot of terrorists here today.
Who's the other
And we
journalist?
know.
Who's the other journalist?
They're
You
oh,
mentioned Chris Pratt.
I'll come back to that in a minute, thank you. And so we really need to stand firm. And fundamentally, we need to reach out to the people we know, most of whom have been brainwashed into accepting the demonization of Julian Assange. If you accept the characterization, the caricature of Julian Assange that the media gives us, he's somewhere between Benedict Arnold and Johnny Rotten. And this is not about whether we like Julian Assange or not.
We do. We do.
The issue is that he is fighting for our rights. He's not even an American citizen. I don't believe he's subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. courts.
Right.
And we need to fight this every step of the way. And I want to answer your question. The other person is a guy named Chris Clark. And he used to work at KGO for many years. And he defines himself as a progressive. And he was one of the people who just said, no, Julian Assange is not a journalist. And that I am misguided in joining this fight. So I think the low-hanging fruit is to persuade people that Chelsea Manning needs to be released immediately. She's being held hostage in this effort to silence leakers, whistleblowers, and journalists. And secondly, we've got to stand firm for the lengthy battle that is before us to block the extradition of Julian Assange from Britain. Can you hear me? No extradition for Julian Assange.
No extradition for Julian Assange. No extradition for Julian Assange.
And a gentleman has a question.
No, we can't. We have to go on. Wait a minute. We don't.
I'll tell you what, I'll
sir,
talk to
no,
you
we don't-
separately,
we don't have
okay?
time. Yeah,
No, I'll
talk
talk
to
to him
him.
offline. Go ahead.
Okay,
I think it's
okay,
Steve.
we are
should
running
finish the
short
speaker.
here because we have to march to the federal building. So our next speaker before we march to the federal building is Catherine Quist from the Answer Coalition.
Steve, we should finish the speaker.
Okay,
Even though we get late.
Hi, my name is Patricia Gorky, and I'm with the Answer
It's gonna have to
Coalition.
wait.
And Answer stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. Answer was formed in the days after 9/11 when it became clear that Bush was going to use the racist scapegoating to invade Iraq and invade Afghanistan as the United States is threatening again. And we are here today. You may ask, why are we here in support of Julian Assange? We are here because Julian Assange organized WikiLeaks, which told the truth. When Bush, when the Washington Post, when the New York Times were telling us it's about weapons of mass destruction, it's about the threat of Saddam Hussein, it was WikiLeaks who published the truth. and that Chelsea Manning leaked that video, collateral murder, showing the United States military in its true face, occupying, causing terror in Iraq. Absolute terror, killing people, killing children. This is what the United States military is about. This is why Julian Assange was forced to gain asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy, where he did not see sun for 6 years, where he is being tortured right now, thrown into jail on trumped-up charges. He is being persecuted by the U.S. empire for telling the truth, for revealing its true face. Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange. Okay.
Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange.
Okay, no, we can't. Okay, so we're going to march now along Market Street. A lot more people will see us on Market Street and see about Julian Assange. We're going to march to 7th and Mission, the federal building there. We're going to follow up with the rest of the speakers. So I hope all of you can continue this effort to free Julian Assange, and let people hear on Market Street what we're talking about, brothers and sisters. Okay. And we have signs here too if people want additional signs.
Where's the federal building?
It's on 7th and Mission.
7th and Mission.
Yeah,
Okay.
or 7th and, so we go on 7th and
7th
Market.
and Mission or 7th and Market?
7th and Mission.
Mission.
Yeah, so we just walk down.
No, I want to go there early because then I need to set up the second.
Okay, you can go there. So just go to 7th and Market and make a right, a left. Yeah, okay, that's, I forgot to mention. I did mention children.
Yeah, you did. 7th and Mission.
Here. No, I have it here. Wait a minute.
Okay, I'll meet you there then.
Here. Oh, people can, if people can help with some signs here, if people need a sign. There's some mics here. Do people have some mics here? Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! So we're going to go down the market and take a right. Are you okay, Gerard?
Relatively, but not great. That's what I'm dealing with. But, huh?
Live on YouTube?
Live on 2 different places, simulcast.
This,
Do you want to hold this? This thing's hot. You can talk.
this one?
Yeah, it works right now. You're on the air.
You can talk. You can talk. You're on the air.
Oh, really? Who am I talking to? Where's this going? Oh, really? I'm on the air.
Oh, hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, man, how are you?
Nice to see you. Glad you make it up
Thank
here.
you so much.
You're right on tape.
Right on.
So, anyway, cool. It's kind of, old school.
This guy, he was a whistleblower.
We'll be going through some very colorful neighborhoods, too.
How long is a walk?
About 3-4 hours.
I'm really checked out.
Well, what you don't know is I'm a second witness to it, and I have my affidavit in my bag, and I hand up.
So I'll just give this back to you when I get down there? Okay.
You want my car?
Right outside.
Sure.
Church Save
All right, thanks, man.
I'm gonna keep my eye out and probably find something. Sorry. Thank you for being here.
Sure. No, I'm glad I got to do it.
Bring Julian aside.
Fan of mine, my show, that I'll pay for you to fly up there to cover it. And I was like, you got it. So.
We would have got you covered one way or another.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put you in this. I was going to get you an Airbnb. If
That's very kind of you.
Thank you for all you do now that I get a chance to tell you that in person.
Oh, it's I'm glad to do it, and it's really cool to get involved.
won't have any. I'll have audio from here. I've got audio now, and here we go. I'm going to go wide. Let's go.
Okay.
Now, do you want to put
specifically for streaming? Is that what that camera is?
Yeah, exactly. So now I got it. Now we're streaming this, but we're way. This is almost like stupid because we're
so far away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they went that way to go that way. So I don't know.
Can somebody help push us in?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, can we take that stuff off the wall there?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I've got a side pocket in my pack.
You just stick it in there if you want.
Okay, I have garbage in my pocket, so I'm going to wait.
Okay, so we can go either way.
So,
you want it fully pushed?
Yeah, once you push it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll do this.
Make sure it doesn't move. Okay. Watch out.
Looks like we got a crew here.
Take it for a while. Sorry, I'm going to run Gerard over.
It's okay. I've been run over before.
I'll cover this part of this.
Okay, here we go.
Now it's great.
But they're all gone. I mean, it's like we're just taking a walk. I might as well turn this thing off.